It's 9 at night. The television is on low. You're half watching your phone, and across the room your dog is sitting completely still. Ears up, eyes wide open, staring at one specific patch of wall where there is, as far as you can tell, absolutely nothing. No bug, no shadow, no sound you can hear. You wait for him to blink it away, get bored, do literally anything else. 30 seconds pass, then a full minute. You say his name, nothing happens, and for one strange quiet second, sitting there in your own living room, you start to wonder if your dog is looking at something you simply cannot see. We're going to come back to that exact moment in a minute, because there isn't one explanation for it. There are at least three, and only one of them is something you should actually be paying attention to. If you search this tonight, most of what you'll find will tell you your dog is sensing something supernatural. A presence standing in the corner that the rest of the household is blind to. Dogs have been cast as seers of the unseen for thousands of years. From old village folklore about dogs sensing death before it arrives, to the modern version that shows up in nearly every horror movie that's ever used a dog growling at an empty hallway. It's a good story, it's also not what's happening. And the real explanation is, in its own way, more interesting than a ghost, because your dog's nervous system isn't broken or mystical here. It's simply running on different settings than yours, and to understand the difference, you have to understand what a dog's eyes, ears, and nose are actually built to notice. Start with the eyes. In 1989, a researcher named Diane Quayle ran a quietly fascinating experiment on a small group of beagles, testing how fast a dog's visual system actually refreshes, meaning how many separate flashes of light per second a dog's brain can register before they blur into one smooth image. It's called critical flicker fusion frequency, and in humans, it sits around 50 to 60 cycles per second, which is why an old television screen, blinking on and off dozens of times a second, looks perfectly steady to you. Quayle's team found that dogs process flicker at something closer to 70 or 80 cycles per second. A light bulb that looks rock solid to you might be subtly, persistently strobing to your dog. Canine cognition researcher Alexandra Horowitz has pointed out this is very likely why most dogs show so little interest in television. It isn't boredom. To their eyes, it looks like a slightly broken picture. Pair that with something else your dog has that you don't. A structure across the retina called the visual streak, a dense band of motion-sensitive cells built to catch movement across a wide field, especially in low light, rather than fine still detail the way your central vision does. A dust mote drifting through a beam of evening light, a faint shift in shadow as a tree sways outside. To you, the wall is empty. To your dog's eyes, something on it may genuinely be moving. That's one layer. Here's a second, and it doesn't involve the eyes at all. Your dog's hearing reaches up into frequencies around 45,000 hertz, while yours tops out near 20,000. That gap is the difference between a silent room and one full of sound you were never built to hear. The thin whine of certain electronics, a faint scratch behind drywall, a pipe cooling after the heat clicks off. When your dog locks onto a blank patch of wall, there's a real chance that wall isn't blank to their ears at all. And then there's the layer almost everybody forgets, because we think of smell as fixed in place, the way a flower smells like itself wherever you stand. That's not how it works for a nose with somewhere between 2 and 300 million scent receptors, compared to your 5 or 6 million. Odor drifts in currents, the way smoke does. And a nose built at that scale doesn't just detect a smell, it can track its movement in something close to real time. Your dog's head locked on that wall might simply be following a current of scent moving through that exact patch of air, the way you'd track a slow cloud crossing the sky, except the cloud is invisible to you. Put those three things together: a faster visual refresh rate, motion-sensitive vision, hearing that reaches frequencies you'll never perceive, and a nose tracking scent like a weather front, and you get something that looks from your side of the room exactly like a dog staring at nothing. It isn't nothing. It's a sensory system more sensitive than yours, doing its job a little too well for our comfort. If your dog does this for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, even most of a minute, then shakes it off and trots back over to you, that's very likely the whole story. Have you ever caught your dog doing exactly this and felt that small chill? You weren't wrong to feel it. You just had the wrong kind of something in mind. But there's a second kind of staring, and people who study aging dogs will tell you it looks different the moment you see it. It doesn't resolve in a minute. Calling their name doesn't snap them back the way it always has. Sometimes it happens in a hallway they've walked through 10,000 times. Sometimes it's a dog facing directly into a corner, as if they simply stopped mid-motion and forgot where the rest of the room went. For a long time, this got written off as nothing more than an old dog being an old dog. That assumption has changed. Veterinary behaviorists now describe this as one symptom inside a well-documented pattern called canine cognitive dysfunction, or CDS, that shows up almost exclusively in dogs past 9 or 10 years old. Clinicians often organize its signs using the acronym DISHA, covering disorientation, social interaction changes, disrupted sleep cycles, house soiling, and shifts in activity level. Staring blankly into space and getting lost in a familiar room both fall under disorientation, and researchers at institutions including Cornell's College of Veterinary Medicine describe it as one of the earliest signs owners report, often long before anything else seems wrong. Here's a number worth sitting with. One international survey estimated that just over 14% of older dogs meet the criteria for CDS, and within that group, only about 2% had actually been diagnosed by a vet. The condition isn't rare. What's rare is anyone catching it early, partly because the signs look exactly like the harmless version we just walked through, and partly because owners quietly explain them away. He's just getting old. He didn't hear me because the television was loud. There's also a detail that makes this land closer to home. Veterinary behaviorists have documented a pattern in CDS, sometimes called sundowning, where confusion noticeably worsens in the evening as light fades, which means if your older dog's strangest staring tends to happen right around 9 at night, that timing isn't a coincidence either way. Underneath that blank stare, something measurable is happening in the brain, and it has a name you've almost certainly heard before, just never attached to a dog. In the early 2000s, a team working between the University of Toronto and the University of California, Irvine, led by Norton Milgram and Carl Kottman, alongside Elizabeth Head and Bruce Muggenberg, began studying the brains of aging beagles in detail. As these dogs aged, a protein called beta amyloid accumulated in their brain tissue, clumping into the same kind of plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease in humans, and dogs and humans share the exact same beta amyloid sequence. The dogs carrying the heaviest plaque buildup were consistently the ones struggling most on cognitive tests and producing more of that flat, disengaged staring their owners had quietly mentioned in passing. Then the researchers turned a sad finding into a hopeful one. In a 3-year study, aged beagles given a diet enriched with antioxidants and mitochondrial cofactors didn't just test better cognitively. Brain analysis afterward showed measurably less amyloid plaque than dogs on a standard diet. A 2010 follow-up combining that diet with consistent behavioral enrichment, new toys, novel problems, regular social interaction found an even stronger effect, meaningfully reducing plaque across several brain regions. The staring isn't just a symptom to log and move past. In a senior dog, it can be one of the earliest visible signs of a real physical process, and one that responds, at least partly, to things you can actually do something about. So how do you tell the difference? Mostly it's duration and context, not the stare itself. A young or middle-aged dog catching a stray flicker or sound for under a minute, then resuming normal behavior, is almost certainly running on the sensory layer we just covered. A senior dog whose staring lasts longer, happens more often, and comes alongside getting lost in familiar rooms or a shifted sleep schedule is worth a real conversation with your vet. Not because it's automatically frightening, but because there's an established path forward if it turns out to be CDS. And a vet visit can also rule out things like seizure activity or vision loss in a single appointment. I think about this because almost every owner of a senior dog eventually lives through some version of the same scene. A dog who has met you at the door for 12 years, and then one evening you walk in and find him standing in the hallway facing the wrong direction, not reacting to your bag hitting the floor. You say his name twice before his head turns. A beat too slow, a beat that didn't used to be there. That moment doesn't mean it's over. For owners who take their dog in and get a CDS diagnosis, what follows usually isn't a straight decline. It's an adjustment, a steadier routine, a diet change, a few new puzzle toys, sometimes medication. What they describe afterward isn't a dog who stopped being themselves. It's a dog still unmistakably there, navigating with a slightly different map, a little slower to find the room you're in, but no less glad, every time, to have found you in it. So go back to that living room. Your dog, staring at a section of wall where you genuinely can't see anything at all. Most of the time, it's nothing dramatic. A flicker your eyes are too slow to catch. A sound pitched above your hearing. A current of scent drifting through the room like wind through tall grass. Invisible to you, and completely obvious to a nose built for exactly this. Your dog isn't haunted. They're simply better equipped than you are, in 3 different ways at once. But every so often, in an older dog, in a stare that lasts a little too long and doesn't release when you call their name, that same posture is the first quiet signal of a brain that has carried them, and you for a decade or more, starting to lose its bearings in small, often manageable ways. The right response is the same either way. Not panic, attention. Meet your dog with patience instead of fear, because that animal staring at the wall has spent years staring at you with nothing but recognition, and they've earned the same back, especially on the nights they can't quite find their way to it as fast as they used to. Has your dog ever done this? Frozen mid-motion, completely unreachable for a few strange seconds? Did it turn out to be nothing? Or the first sign of something you didn't expect? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. That's a wrap for today's video. I'll see you in the next one.